Proactive baseline elevation, the art of sustainable satisfaction. There exists a mysterious quality in certain lives that transcends circumstance, a steady radiance of contentment that persists through changing seasons of fortune and loss. These individuals have discovered something profound about the architecture of human satisfaction. That baseline contentment operates according to subtle laws that most people never learn. Laws that govern not the peaks and valleys of experience, but the very ground of daily existence itself. You have done extraordinary work to arrive at this moment, dear friend. Through Chapter 14's careful baseline assessment, you discovered your unique satisfaction patterns, strengths, and areas for cultivation. The obstacles have been cleared through careful pruning, the patterns recognized and healed through skillful meaning-making, the life domains optimized for flourishing. Now comes the systematic elevation work, transforming your baseline assessment insights into active practices that sustain and gradually elevate the very foundation of your satisfaction. This chapter builds directly upon your assessment discoveries, showing you how to implement the specific elevation strategies that your unique satisfaction architecture requires. This work requires understanding something that eludes most approaches to happiness. Why do some changes in life create lasting improvements in how we feel, while others fade quickly back to previous levels? Why do some people maintain steady contentment through various life conditions, while others find their satisfaction dependent on constantly achieving new peaks? What distinguishes temporary mood enhancement from genuine baseline elevation that transforms the very quality of ordinary existence? The answers lie in understanding that baseline contentment operates like a sophisticated ecosystem rather than a simple on-off switch. Like the master gardener who tends not just individual plants, but the entire web of relationships that creates thriving soil, optimal light distribution, and beneficial insect populations. Sustainable satisfaction emerges from multiple interconnected elements working together to create conditions where contentment naturally flourishes. The satisfaction ecosystem. Understanding the science of lasting elevation. Contemporary research in positive psychology has revealed that sustainable satisfaction operates through what Dr. Barbara Fredrickson calls upward spirals of positive emotions that compound over time rather than fading through adaptation. Unlike temporary mood boosts that peak and return to baseline, genuine baseline elevation creates what she terms broadened awareness that enables better recognition of opportunities, resources, and positive experiences that were always present but previously invisible. This broaden and build effect means that small improvements in baseline satisfaction create expanding capacity for noticing and appreciating positive elements in daily experience, which generates more positive emotions, which further broadens awareness in self-reinforcing cycles that strengthen over time. The person who develops slightly elevated baseline contentment begins noticing beauty, kindness, and meaning that escaped attention during periods of lower satisfaction, creating additional positive experiences that support further elevation. Set point theory updates from recent longitudinal studies reveal baseline happiness as more malleable than originally believed. Durkin and Sheldon's research demonstrates that while people do have genetically influenced set ranges for satisfaction, these ranges are broader than previously thought, and systematic practice can shift entire ranges upward rather than just creating temporary deviations from fixed points. This research provides realistic hope for sustained baseline elevation while acknowledging that change requires consistent effort rather than single interventions. Like soil improvement that happens gradually through seasons of composting, watering, and careful cultivation. Baseline satisfaction. Elevation emerges through patient application of multiple practices that work together over time. The satisfaction-resilience connection reveals how elevated baselines create buffer against adversity rather than just enhancing good times. People with higher baseline contentment demonstrate greater capacity to maintain emotional stability during difficulties while recovering more quickly from temporary setbacks. This resilience emerges not from denial of problems, but from internal resources that remain accessible even when external circumstances become challenging. Consider the difference between someone whose satisfaction depends entirely on favorable conditions versus someone whose baseline contentment provides steady ground regardless of temporary storms. When difficulties arise, the first person experiences complete disruption of well-being, while the second maintains access to inner stability that supports effective response to challenges without losing fundamental life satisfaction. Advanced hedonic adaptation. Prevention, the art of sustaining appreciation. The hedonic treadmill represents one of the most significant obstacles to lasting satisfaction elevation. Yet recent research reveals sophisticated approaches to preventing or slowing adaptation that go far beyond simple variety introduction. These advanced techniques work by understanding the specific mechanisms through which familiarity erodes appreciation, then designing conscious interventions that maintain freshness within stable life structures. Savoring practices extend positive experiences beyond their natural duration through systematic attention that Dr. Fred Bryant's research shows can multiply satisfaction benefits by 300–400%. Unlike passive enjoyment that happens automatically, savoring involves conscious amplification of positive elements through anticipation, present moment awareness, and memory enhancement that prevents adaptation from erasing gains. Before positive experiences occur, practice anticipatory savoring by imagining specific details and allowing yourself to feel excited about upcoming events without anxiety about everything going perfectly. During positive experiences, engage multiple senses consciously rather than allowing attention to drift toward planning or problem solving. After positive experiences, practice recall savoring by reviewing highlights in detail, sharing stories with others, and recording specific elements that created satisfaction. Microdosing novelty prevents adaptation without requiring overwhelming change through small daily variations that maintain freshness within familiar routines. Research shows that minor alterations in timing, sequence, or approach can prevent the neural habituation that causes satisfaction erosion while preserving the comfort and efficiency that routine provides. Vary your morning routine by occasionally changing the order of activities, trying different coffee preparation methods, or taking alternate routes for regular errands. Introduce small changes to work patterns by rearranging your workspace monthly, varying meeting locations when possible, or alternating between different types of tasks throughout the day. These micro changes maintain engagement without disrupting the structural stability that supports productivity and stress management. Anticipation architecture uses the research finding that looking forward to positive events often provides more satisfaction than the events themselves, suggesting that conscious creation of positive anticipations can significantly elevate baseline experience. This involves systematic planning of small positive experiences distributed throughout weeks and months that create ongoing forward-looking satisfaction. Plan regular small pleasures rather than relying on occasional large events for satisfaction enhancement. Schedule weekly activities you genuinely enjoy, create monthly experiences to anticipate, and develop seasonal traditions that provide cyclical renewal. The key involves ensuring sufficient frequency that you always have something pleasant approaching while maintaining enough spacing to prevent anticipation from becoming overwhelming. Memory enhancement techniques strengthen recall of positive experiences to extend their satisfaction impact far beyond their original duration. Dr. Sonia Lyubomirsky's research demonstrates that people who systematically review and organize positive memories maintain access to their emotional benefits months or years later, while those who rely on automatic memory retain little satisfaction value from past positive experiences. Create regular practices for reviewing recent positive experiences, organizing photos or mementos that trigger satisfying recall, and sharing positive memories with others who were present or who appreciate their significance. Weekly or monthly review sessions that explore recent highlights prevent positive experiences from fading into forgettable background, while building appreciation patterns that enhance future experience recognition. The Contentment Maintenance System, precision care for lasting elevation. Building upon the satisfaction patterns you discovered through Chapter 14's assessment work, lasting baseline elevation requires ongoing maintenance systems that protect and nurture your contentment ecosystem through systematic care rather than leaving satisfaction levels to chance or circumstance. Satisfaction signature application involves implementing the specific combinations of activities, environments, and practices that your Chapter 14 assessment revealed as most reliably supporting elevated contentment for your unique psychology and circumstances. Rather than continuing to experiment with what works, this phase focuses on consistently applying your discovered satisfaction formulas while refining their implementation for maximum effectiveness. Create structured approaches to regularly engaging with the specific activities, relationships, and environments that your assessment identified as most nourishing. If your baseline assessment revealed that creative expression consistently elevates your satisfaction, develop reliable weekly creative practices rather than waiting for inspiration or motivation. If social connection proves most important for your satisfaction, establish regular relationship cultivation practices that ensure consistent access to meaningful interpersonal engagement. The key involves moving from discovery to implementation, using your assessment insights to design lifestyle architecture that automatically provides regular access to your most effective satisfaction sources, rather than hoping they occur naturally through random circumstances. Maintenance tracking systems provide simple ongoing awareness of your satisfaction trends without returning to the intensive assessment focus of Chapter 14. These streamlined monitoring approaches help maintain awareness of how your elevation practices are working while identifying when adjustments might enhance their effectiveness. Develop brief weekly reflection practices that assess whether your implemented satisfaction practices are maintaining their effectiveness. Note any external factors that are supporting or interfering with your baseline elevation efforts, and identify small adjustments that could enhance your established practices rather than requiring major strategy changes. Proactive adjustment protocols provide systematic approaches for refining and optimizing your satisfaction practices when they begin losing effectiveness or when life circumstances change in ways that affect their implementation. Rather than waiting for satisfaction decline to become noticeable, these protocols enable small modifications that maintain elevation momentum. Enhanced psychological richness. Cultivating optimal life complexity. Psychological richness involves the conscious cultivation of experiences that provide novelty, challenge, and meaning, without overwhelming your capacity for integration. Dr. Shigehiro Oishi's research reveals that lives high in psychological richness demonstrate greater satisfaction and resilience than those focused exclusively on positive emotions or meaning, suggesting that optimal complexity represents a distinct pathway to sustained well-being. Complexity theory applications help determine optimal challenge levels that vary by individual capacity and life season. Like gardens that thrive with different plant diversity depending on soil conditions and climate, your satisfaction benefits from consciously calibrated complexity that stretches without overwhelming your current psychological resources. During high-stress life periods, psychological richness might involve adding small learning challenges or creative projects that provide mental stimulation without creating additional pressure. During stable periods, you might embrace more substantial learning opportunities, travel experiences, or skill development that add texture and growth to routine existence. The learning satisfaction connection reveals how continuous growth prevents the stagnation that naturally erodes baseline contentment even when external circumstances remain favorable. Dr. Carol Dweck's research on growth mindset demonstrates that people who view abilities as developable rather than fixed maintain higher satisfaction through engagement with challenges that would discourage fixed mindset individuals. Identify learning domains that genuinely interest you rather than pursuing growth for productivity or achievement purposes. Whether through formal education, skill development, creative exploration, or deeper understanding of subjects that fascinate you, regular learning provides psychological richness that prevents satisfaction from depending entirely on external circumstances or achievements. Depth versus breadth strategies help navigate the choice between deepening existing interests versus exploring new domains based on your current satisfaction patterns and life circumstances. Some people benefit from exploring diverse experiences that add breadth to their psychological landscape, while others gain more from developing expertise and deeper understanding within chosen areas. Experiment with both approaches to discover your optimal richness balance. If your life feels scattered, focus on developing deeper engagement with fewer activities that genuinely matter to you. If your life feels narrow or repetitive, consciously add new experiences that challenge familiar patterns while building on existing strengths rather than requiring complete departure from current interests. Advanced social comparison mastery, creating supportive relational contexts. Social comparison represents one of the most powerful influences on baseline satisfaction, yet most people remain unconscious of how comparison patterns either support or undermine their natural contentment. Advanced social comparison mastery involves conscious curation of social environments and comparison frameworks that elevate rather than diminish your satisfaction baseline. Comparison immunity training builds resistance to toxic social comparison, triggers through systematic exposure to comparison situations, while practicing alternative response patterns that maintain baseline satisfaction. Like developing physical immunity through controlled exposure, comparison immunity develops through conscious practice of appreciative rather than competitive responses to others' achievements or advantages. When you notice comparison triggers arising, practice conscious appreciation for others' success as evidence of what's possible rather than proof of your inadequacy. Use others' achievements as inspiration for potential development rather than measurement of current deficiency. This reframing gradually builds immunity to comparison toxicity while maintaining access to social information that can guide constructive growth. Inspirational versus aspirational models involves choosing role models and social influences that elevate your satisfaction through realistic inspiration rather than creating inadequacy through impossible aspirational standards. Inspirational models demonstrate achievable growth that motivates without overwhelming, while aspirational models often represent lifestyles or achievements so far beyond current reality that they generate discouragement rather than motivation. Seek mentors, friends, and social media influences whose examples feel encouraging rather than intimidating, whose paths seem related to your actual circumstances and capabilities, and whose achievements require development over time rather than requiring advantages you don't possess. This conscious curation creates social environments that support your baseline elevation rather than systematically undermining it through unrealistic comparison. Community curation strategies involve systematically building social environments that support elevated baselines through mutual appreciation, shared growth, and collaborative rather than competitive dynamics. Research shows that people embedded in communities focused on mutual flourishing maintain higher satisfaction than those in environments emphasizing individual achievement or status competition. Invest time in relationships and communities that celebrate everyone's growth rather than ranking relative success, that share resources and knowledge rather than hoarding advantages, and that provide mutual support during challenges rather than conditional acceptance based on achievement. This might involve joining learning communities, volunteer organizations, spiritual communities, or creative groups that prioritize collective well-being alongside individual development. Systematic elevation care, protocols for long-term satisfaction. Architecture. Like master gardeners who follow seasonal maintenance schedules that prevent problems rather than just responding to crises, sustainable baseline elevation requires systematic care protocols that maintain satisfaction ecosystem health through consistent cultivation rather than sporadic intervention. Elevation practice rotation prevents staleness in your satisfaction, supporting activities by introducing systematic variation that maintains effectiveness without abandoning proven approaches. Based on your Chapter 14 assessment insights, create rotation schedules that provide variety within your identified satisfaction categories rather than completely changing your approach. If creative expression supports your baseline satisfaction, rotate between different creative mediums monthly while maintaining consistent creative practice. If social connection proves essential, vary the types of social engagement, intimate conversations, group activities, community service, while ensuring regular interpersonal nourishment. This approach maintains the core satisfaction sources your assessment identified while preventing adaptation through thoughtful variation. Seasonal satisfaction architecture aligns your elevation practices with natural energy rhythms and life circumstances that change predictably throughout the year. Rather than maintaining identical practices, regardless of season or life demands, systematic elevation adapts implementation while preserving essential satisfaction elements that your assessment revealed as non-negotiable. Design winter practices that emphasize indoor satisfaction sources like learning, creative projects, or intimate relationships when outdoor activities become less accessible. Create summer variations that take advantage of increased social opportunities, natural light exposure, and physical activity options. Align quarterly reviews with seasonal transitions to adjust elevation practice implementation while maintaining commitment to your discovered satisfaction essentials. Practice evolution protocols enable gradual enhancement and sophistication of your satisfaction practices over time, rather than treating them as static techniques that never develop. As your elevation practices mature and your circumstances change, systematic evolution ensures continued effectiveness while building upon established foundations. Begin with simplified versions of practice that your assessment identified as most promising. Then gradually add complexity, depth, or integration as they become habitual. A basic gratitude practice might evolve into sophisticated appreciation cultivation. Simple social connection might develop into deeper community engagement. Elementary creative expression might advance toward more ambitious artistic projects. This evolution maintains engagement while honoring your assessment discoveries about what fundamentally supports your satisfaction. Integration with your contentment journey, from assessment to active elevation. The proactive baseline elevation work of this chapter represents the natural next step from Chapter 14's foundational assessment, transforming diagnostic insights into systematic satisfaction cultivation practices. This progression reveals how thorough self-understanding creates the foundation for precise intervention that actually works for your unique psychology and circumstances. Implementing your assessment discoveries shows how Chapter 14's baseline understanding translates into specific elevation practices tailored to your individual satisfaction architecture. Rather than applying generic happiness techniques, you now possess the self-knowledge necessary for strategic satisfaction cultivation that addresses your actual patterns and needs. The meaning-making capacity you developed in Chapter 16 works synergistically with your baseline elevation practices, as stable satisfaction enables more skillful response to life's inevitable challenges, while meaningful challenge navigation contributes to sustained baseline elevation through authentic growth and wisdom development. Creating foundation for service reveals how the stable contentment you're systematically cultivating creates capacity for sustainable contribution rather than service emerging from deficit or attempts to earn worth through helpful actions. Chapter 20's exploration of meaningful contribution builds upon the baseline satisfaction that enables generous engagement with others' needs rather than depleting service that cannot be maintained over time. When your satisfaction provides reliable foundation independent of external validation, service becomes expression of abundance rather than strategy for creating worth or security. This transformation enables contribution that actually serves others' needs rather than primarily meeting your own psychological requirements disguised as helpfulness. Building upon pruning work demonstrates how the obstacle removal practices of Chapter 15 created space for these elevation practices to take root and flourish. The internal patterns and external circumstances that previously drained satisfaction no longer compete with elevation practices for limited psychological resources, enabling consistent application of contentment, cultivation approaches that your assessment identified as most promising. The living architecture of sustainable satisfaction. When these advanced baseline elevation practices become integrated rather than practiced as separate techniques, they create what might be called a satisfaction architecture. Internal and external conditions that naturally support elevated baseline contentment through multiple reinforcing factors working together like elements in a thriving ecosystem. The prevention of hedonic adaptation through savoring and microdosing novelty maintains freshness in routine experiences while preventing the gradual satisfaction erosion that familiarity creates. Psychological richness, cultivation adds texture and interest that sustains engagement independent of external validation while expanding your capacity for wonder and discovery within chosen domains. Contentment calibration systems provide ongoing awareness and adjustment mechanisms that prevent satisfaction, decline while supporting continued elevation through conscious attention to what actually works for your unique circumstances. Social comparison mastery eliminates unnecessary satisfaction drains while creating realistic perspective and supportive community contexts that enhance, rather than undermine, natural contentment. Satisfaction maintenance protocols ensure that baseline elevation becomes sustainable lifestyle rather than temporary improvement that fades when life becomes busy or challenging. Most importantly, this ecosystem approach recognizes baseline satisfaction as emerging from the quality of relationship you maintain with your actual life rather than depending on particular circumstances or achievements. This foundation of sustainable satisfaction creates the emotional stability and generous capacity necessary for discovering authentic purpose, developing meaningful work, and contributing to healing and progress that extends beyond personal boundaries. When your baseline contentment provides reliable ground, you gain energy and motivation for life that serves both personal flourishing and collective well-being through engagement that emerges from fullness rather than emptiness. The steady contentment you have cultivated becomes like rich soil that supports whatever seeds of service and contribution want to grow through your unique gifts and circumstances. From this foundation of elevated baseline satisfaction, development naturally unfolds, creating capacity for life that transcends the narrow focus of individual satisfaction to embrace the magnificent complexity of conscious existence in service to the larger flourishing of which you are both beneficiary and contributor. Through patient cultivation of your satisfaction ecosystem and systematic elevation of baseline contentment, you develop internal resources that support flourishing regardless of external circumstances, while creating capacity for generous engagement with life's opportunities for growth, connection, and contribution. This sustainable satisfaction becomes the foundation for authentic purpose and meaningful service that honors both your individual nature and your connection to the larger web of life in which true contentment ultimately resides. Part 5. Integration, the Satisfaction Ecosystem Foundation. The comprehensive baseline elevation work of Part 5 has created the essential infrastructure for sustainable contentment through systematic development of what might be called your personal satisfaction ecosystem. The internal and external conditions that naturally support elevated baseline experience, regardless of temporary circumstances or external achievements. Like a master gardener who understands that thriving gardens emerge from optimal soil conditions, beneficial plant relationships, appropriate seasonal rhythms, and patient cultivation rather than random intervention, you have learned that lasting satisfaction develops through conscious creation of conditions where contentment emerges naturally through ordinary engagement with life, rather than requiring perfect circumstances or constant external validation. Your satisfaction ecosystem discovery began with accurate baseline assessment that revealed your unique patterns of what consistently supports versus drains your fundamental contentment. This diagnostic foundation enabled targeted cultivation rather than generic self-improvement, showing you where conscious attention could create the most significant elevation while honoring your individual psychology and life circumstances. Evidence-based satisfaction cultivation provided the scientific grounding for lasting change through positive psychology research, gratitude practices that literally rewire neural patterns toward appreciation, and self-compassion approaches that create an emotional resilience, supporting sustained development rather than perfectionist pressure that undermines authentic growth. Neuroplasticity, understanding offered realistic hope for continued baseline elevation throughout all life phases, demonstrating how conscious attention to satisfaction, supporting practices creates lasting changes in brain structure that support automatic contentment patterns rather than requiring constant willpower or external motivation to maintain elevated states. Flow state cultivation revealed how the alignment of challenge and skill transforms routine activities into intrinsically satisfying experiences, providing sustainable motivation independent of external rewards while showing how to design daily life that generates its own satisfaction through engagement rather than depending on achievements or favorable circumstances. Advanced baseline elevation strategies integrated these foundations into sophisticated approaches for preventing hedonic adaptation through conscious variety, cultivating psychological richness that adds texture and meaning to ordinary experience, creating renewal cycles that maintain ecosystem health, and recalibrating social comparisons toward inspiration rather than competition. The compound effect of ecosystem thinking means that each element of your satisfaction architecture amplifies the effectiveness of others, creating synergistic results where gratitude enhances self-compassion. Self-compassion supports flow states. Flow generates positive experiences. Positive experiences strengthen neural pathways toward contentment, and elevated contentment creates conditions for deeper appreciation and more generous engagement with life's opportunities. This integration reveals satisfaction not as feeling dependent on favorable conditions, but as capacity for thriving that emerges when internal and external ecosystem elements work together to support your natural human potential for baseline contentment. You have developed what researchers call emotional richness, the ability to find meaning, appreciation, and engagement within whatever circumstances life provides, while maintaining appropriate effort toward authentic goals and healthy relationships. The satisfaction-resilience connection has emerged through your ecosystem. Cultivation. Elevated baseline contentment creates buffer against adversity rather than just enhancing good times. When difficulties arise, your satisfaction ecosystem provides internal stability and external resources that enable effective response to challenges without losing fundamental life satisfaction or the capacity for continued growth and contribution. The service preparation dimension reveals how stable contentment creates capacity for sustainable contribution, rather than service emerging from deficit, neediness, or attempts to earn worth through helpful actions. Your satisfaction ecosystem enables generous engagement with others' needs and collective challenges because it provides reliable internal foundation, independent of external validation or specific outcomes from helping efforts. This foundation prepares you perfectly for the meaningful work of Part 6, where individual baseline elevation naturally extends toward authentic purpose discovery, meaningful work development, and contribution to healing and progress that extends beyond personal boundaries. When your satisfaction ecosystem provides stable ground, you gain energy and motivation for discovering how your unique gifts can serve purposes larger than individual enhancement. The evolution from individual to collective flourishing represents the natural progression of satisfaction ecosystem maturity. As your baseline contentment stabilizes through conscious cultivation, attention naturally expands from personal enhancement toward understanding how your individual thriving can contribute to family, community, and collective well-being without depleting the satisfaction foundation that enables sustained service. The steady contentment you have cultivated becomes like rich soil that supports whatever seeds of service and contribution want to grow through your unique gifts, interests, and circumstances. From this foundation of elevated baseline satisfaction, all other development naturally unfolds, creating capacity for life that serves both personal flourishing and collective well-being through generous rather than needy engagement with the magnificent complexity of conscious existence. Your satisfaction ecosystem continues developing throughout life, adapting to changing circumstances while maintaining the essential elements that support thriving regardless of external conditions. This represents perhaps the most valuable gift you can offer both yourself and the world, the demonstration that sustained contentment remains possible through conscious cultivation of conditions that honor both individual authenticity and collective flourishing. Integration practice, satisfaction ecosystem, maintenance ecosystem, health assessment, monthly evaluate how the various elements of your satisfaction ecosystem, internal practices, external conditions, social relationships, meaningful activities, are working together to support elevated baseline contentment. Notice which elements need attention and which are flourishing. Compound effect recognition. Weekly identify how small satisfaction-supporting practices have created cumulative benefits beyond their individual impact. Celebrate the synergistic effects where different practices amplify each other's effectiveness. Adaptation prevention review. Regularly assess which satisfaction practices remain fresh and engaging versus those showing signs of diminishing effectiveness through familiarity. Implement conscious variety and renewal approaches to maintain ecosystem vitality. Resilient satisfaction. In integration, during challenging periods, notice how your satisfaction ecosystem provides internal stability and external resources that enable effective response without depleting fundamental contentment. Use difficulties as opportunities to strengthen ecosystem resilience. Service capacity assessment. Seasonally reflect on how stable baseline satisfaction creates generous capacity for contributing to others' well-being and collective challenges. Notice the difference between service emerging from abundance versus service motivated by personal needs for validation or purpose.